Welcome to the Positive Impact Podcast, where we dive into the world of movers, shakers, and changemakers, creating a positive impact on the world. This is your host, Alexandra Black-Pollock, and together we're going to tackle real issues, discovering how we can make the world a better place. This episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Tired of the grocery store? Looking to spice up dinners? HelloFresh delivers delicious ingredients and easy recipes straight to your door. Take $40 off your first box at positiveimpactpodcast.com/fresh. You'll be enjoying cooking again in no time. If you're looking to make an immediate impact, then today's show is for you. I'm excited to have joining us Olivier Kamanda, founder of a brand new app hitting the market, Ideal Impact. This innovative app bridges the gap between stories we read on the news and our desire to help out through connecting readers to social impact opportunities. These organizations address the actual cause and issue from the article. Now, outside this incredible app, Olivier has an impressive background, including founder, Foreign Policy Digest, Truman National Security Project Fellow, and former speechwriter and senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And my personal favorite, a long-standing sous chef of Miriam's Kitchen, a DC homeless service organization. Wow, Olivier, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Phew, that is a phenomenal resume you have behind you.
Thank you. It's not as impressive as it sounds, but I appreciate it.
Very humble. Before we dive into Ideal Impact, and I'm so excited to go there, I'm just curious, what was your role as speechwriter for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton like?
It was a lot of long hours and late nights, but it's certainly exciting work. The team was small, and so we covered the full gamut of international affairs, State Department, and some domestic policy issues. But as you can imagine, it was a pretty fast-paced environment, which looking back on it, my wife says I liked telling people I was a speechwriter more than I liked being a speechwriter. But I think it was a big learning curve for me, having come straight from law school, but an incredible opportunity to work with a really fascinating and enlightened and empowered team.
Did you just say you went from law school to speechwriter?
Yeah. So when I was in law school, I started as Foreign Policy Digest, which I think you mentioned in the intro, which kind of gave me an opportunity to try to explain international affairs to people who didn't necessarily have a background in it. And the community of folks in DC, I think, who were working with the secretary's team happened to hear about it. And by the time I graduated, I was in the running for the fourth speechwriter position. So I actually graduated from law school in late May or June, studied for the bar all summer, took the bar on like a Wednesday in August, and then started at State, I think, that Friday. So didn't really take a lot of time off, but I think that kind of contributed to the excitement around the opportunity.
I have to admit, I haven't met a lot of lawyers who turn into speechwriters, so props to you. That's incredible.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the skills are more similar than you would imagine, right? At the end of the day, if you're writing a brief or writing a speech or making an argument, the lawyers and the speechwriters and writers who can tell a good story are the ones, I think, who just can appreciate how all those are more similar than dissimilar. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other lawyers turned speechwriters out there.
Well, I guess I've never looked at it that way. You are just telling a story and gaining public persuasion.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, you go from law school to helping Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tell her story, and now you're in this app that is helping people go from reading these stories to actually creating change. Can you walk us through where this idea came from?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story.
It
as you
always
can
is,
imagine.
right?
It is. I'll try to be as succinct as possible. So essentially, when I graduated from college, I moved back to DC and had started volunteering with this homeless services organization called Miriam's Kitchen, and providing food to someone who needs it is just incredibly powerful. But I think I and a lot of other volunteers and a lot of the staff at the organization, the advocacy element of homeless services work, and this organization had just started to build an advocacy campaign or advocacy team. Um, Having some experience uh, serving an elected office and really kind of been fascinated by what engages people and what helps them or what information helps them determine how they spend their time, whether it's consumer decisions or political decisions. I really wanted to help out with this advocacy campaign. And the campaign started as a way to lobby the city government to put more money behind homeless services. The goal is to influence the decision makers. And in DC, our city council at the time was really only going to take this up if we were able to show popular support behind it. And it just so happened that at the same time, the New York Times had been working on this incredible long form story about the life of this 12-year-old girl in New York. And it was the kind of piece that just made people appreciate the individual people who suffer from homelessness. I started seeing people who I'd never really known had expressed an interest in homelessness, looking for ways to engage and to help not just the families in the story, but other families affected by homelessness. And for me, that was the opportunity where it clicked, where seeing everyone commenting and sharing and lamenting the state of homelessness, and knowing that, in our city that there was this campaign that was looking to capitalize on that energy and direct it towards a positive cause.
It's so great that you took that moment where others might have been just frustrated that, they have this cause and now they have all these people who want to support but don't have the gap. Rather than being frustrated, you really look to build a bridge.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it's really about kind of resolving that inefficiency because nonprofits and advocacy groups spend an inordinate amount of time trying to find people who care about their issue. People share stories that matter to them. If there was some way to capture that inspiration and that energy when people are sharing stories or on social media about issues they care about, with the organizations that are on the front lines of social change, right, that are trying to identify people who care about their issue, that you would have an incredible capacity to bridge that gap and engage people in the work that is really important and much needed.
It really is fascinating how all these different events happen and people want to be so supportive. From even just campaigns, the Ice Bucket Challenge took over the entire US. When Nepal had their earthquake, Facebook stepped up to enable people to activate and donate. And you're looking to take that exact same momentum and make it easier.
Right. The technology serves two purposes, right? It helps to facilitate that connection, but the larger goal is to help people think about engaging in the news more actively, right? Like reading the news should be an active experience, not a passive one. And if we're successful in facilitating that connection where people, read a story and immediately think, all right, well, what are my options to engage as opposed to just lamenting the state of the world, we think that hopefully will change the way people think about the news broadly, and hopefully get some of the media players to adapt the way that they write and engage their readers as well.
Reading the news should be active and not passive. That is an incredible marching order for everyone.
Yes, yeah, indeed. We're trying to recruit troops every day.
So let's get this straight. In order to do this, you need to activate society to understand that when they read these stories, they can take part. You're getting the media to readjust the way that they write stories and go about influencing change. How does this all happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. For ideal impact, there are kind of two ways to think about it. We could either approach media companies directly and say, "Hey, Vox or Huffington Post or New York Times, for every article that touches on a social issue, you should present the readers with options to engage." The challenge for any organization, whether it's a small organization like a startup like mine, the challenge is the time for a decision to trickle through any of these big companies, bureaucracies, that can take like a year or 2 years, and so we thought that the real test would be, well, why don't you provide a platform that lets the individual consumer make that determination, which is why we ended up launching this mobile app, and the mobile app really tries to engage people directly. So the app is on your phone. People spend an inordinate amount of time on their phones for no particular reason. We can take that time and make that pitch directly to the individual to say, hey, if you're really motivated by that story, what you do is you essentially share that article with Ideal Impact the same way you would share it with Facebook or Twitter. Sharing an article with us gives you recommendations to volunteer, donate, sign petitions, and advocate for the issues that you care about.
Let's dig into the actual app just a little bit. Myself as a user, what can I expect once I download it? Or how am I supposed to use this app to help further the causes that I support?
So there are two main ways. One, once you download the app, you can actually just load it organically like any other app. And what we've done is when the app loads, you'll see a list of kind of the top news stories deal with social issues, right? So we choose probably like 5 or so a day. And so if you click on any one of those news stories, whether it's immigration or shooting or whichever the story is, we have ways to engage. So petitions to sign and places to volunteer and jobs to apply for. And the other way to use the app is actually, as I mentioned, is more indirect when you're reading the news in some other app, right, where the New York Times app and Facebook, and a story pops up and you're just curious as to what opportunities are out there. That's where you can actually just share the article with our app. Along the same lines, you'll see the ways to engage directly with that particular news story.
I currently have the app open. So to give our listener an idea of the type of things that show up on the app, currently I'm looking at a story about the shooting in San Bernardino, questioning how effective Giving Tuesday is, as well as the tragedy from Paris. Now, when I activate this app and I go to support, how can me as a user feel confident in the organizations that I'm partnered with?
Yeah, so this is really important. What we wanted to do was create an environment where the opportunities that we list on the app have been essentially vetted by our community and our network. So we started with 300 organizations in DC, which were the highest rated nonprofit and advocacy organizations in the city. And then as we started to scale regionally and nationally, we tried to identify like what those metrics were that make engagement successful. There's a formula to that. There's a way that they engage their volunteers. There's a way that they tell their story that we think is part of that recipe for success that other organizations, whether they're in Albuquerque or New York or Philadelphia or Paris, for example, they'll all exhibit the same types of engagement. And so our goal is to try to replicate that formula in different cities and find the places, the organizations, and the individuals that are doing really interesting work. And the nonprofit organizations that we promote and list have been vetted by Charity Navigator, GuideStar, and other evaluative programs. And it's by organizations that do this professionally. So we're not necessarily in the business of checking people's Form 990s. There are tons of organizations that do that. But the goal is really to get people to invest in submitting opportunities to the site and just have the crowd identify the best opportunities in the same way that Yelp does that for restaurants and other professional services.
That's a lot of back work to make sure these organizations that we're supporting are really good.
Yeah, and you don't get it right all the time, but the goal is to have people say, hey, I volunteered here, I advocated here, I signed this petition, and we reach out to folks and say, all right, well, was that a meaningful experience? Would you recommend it? And I think we are building that validating network so that we get it right the next time.
I have to point out because this is just, I'm having a hard time grappling with this. This shooting in San Bernardino, as of this recording, was 2 days ago. Yet already you guys have a way that users can activate and help that cause and address that issue. How did that happen so fast?
We knew that this was going to be an issue that people cared about. It was, and our goal is to be as responsive to the news as we can. And right now it's just me. So, it's just, I wake up in the morning and I identify like all the different types of stories that are, rising to national attention. Unfortunately, when some of these tragedies occur, like we have already established that these organizations are ready to mobilize and ready to engage people in some of these like larger efforts. In terms of being able to respond quickly, I think that's just going to be a function of the growth and scale of our team. But as much as we can automate, we can, and to the rest of it is just a function of waking up early and reading a whole lot of newspapers.
You must subscribe everywhere.
Yeah, and for a while I was doing print subscriptions, but it doesn't make any sense. That's not environmentally friendly at this point. So
Your poor delivery boy.
yeah, yeah, we have a lot of e-subscriptions now, which just makes way more sense.
And also, let's focus on that sad reality that within the last week or two alone, we've had 2 shootings. So you already knew those organizations and you were able to connect those causes.
Right. Yeah. Which is, the way you phrase it, it is kind of that sad reality that we have to be to think ahead as to like what are the types of issues and challenges that we're going to face in the future. And it is a shame that some of these tend to pop up and gun violence happens to be one of the ones this year that is more cyclical, obviously, than we would like. But the goal of this is really to engage people to start advocating for the issues that they support, and to the extent that we have a user base that cares about this issue, we want to connect people and facilitate that engagement.
You've talked a lot about kind of your future goals and how it's currently you, but the future is bright. Can you dive into a little bit of what you see as a future of this movement and this app?
Yeah, so what we are hopefully going to announce when when this interview is live is that we are starting a fellowship program, and the fellowship program will be a way for anyone who has between 5 and 10 hours a week to engage with us and help organize social impact opportunities and recruit more users and organizations into our community. And so a couple weeks ago, we had our launch event, panel discussion on how to join a nonprofit board, which we think kind of speaks to just one of the broader ways that people can engage on social issues and provide their skills and experiences. And so we want to do more of those events, not just in DC, but in every city that's got people who care about social impact issues. And so the fellowship is really geared around inviting people and drawing people into the fold who get it, right? Who can read the byline and say, all right, I see what you're trying to do. I believe that reading the news should be an active experience, and I want to live a life in line with my values and like engage other people who want to do that as well. So we think the fellowship is going to be really powerful in drawing people into the fold, and telling our story and allowing this to grow outside of some of the initial assumptions that I had, because I by no means have answered all the questions about what ideal impact should look like. I want this to be something that people have invested in and like made their own. Um, and so we're really excited about opening it up.
When you describe drawing in people who get it, I know that a lot of your target demographic is millennials. What are you seeing today in terms of millennials and generosity?
So this is an interesting question, right? Because I think we're at a point now where there's a generational shift in terms of how people think about engagement and service. Whereas before, there was almost an assumption that there were three phases to your life, right? Learn, earn, return, right? So the first phase is, go to school, learn as much as you can. The second phase, earning, is, getting a job and providing for your family. And the third phase is returning. So that's where the phrase kind of giving back comes from, right? Is like after the house is paid off and the kids have graduated from college, uh, that was the time typically where folks look to support their community, and and the reality is that now we don't, particularly millennials, don't think about the world in that way anymore, right? The ability to affect the world and shape the world is not really a function of age or income. It's just like your intensity of purpose. And I think the reality is that every day we read the news and we just have more information about what's going on than we ever did before, but we actually have greater tools that allow us to directly shape the world we live in. So the rise of civic tech and crowdfunding, open data, and all these other initiatives make it that much easier for us to engage on a daily basis in a way that I don't think was true before. And so even the definition of philanthropy, which is essentially, I think, the Greek term acts of love towards your fellow man, is something that everyone can do and should do, and it's not exclusively limited to people who have tremendous wealth. And we think millennials get that because they are starting to see the world in that way.
Your ability to make an impact isn't limited to the cycle of learn, earn, return. It is directly tied to the intensity of purpose. That gives me chills. That's exciting. That's activating. And that is exactly what you're hoping to do with Ideal Impact, is activate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because we think, everyone should be able to have their ideal impact, quote unquote, and identify like the skills and experiences that they have that are just unique to them, that the world needs to see and feel and experience. And that's where the name came from.
Now we're going to both go from changing the way we read the news to hopefully changing the type of news that is reported, because we limit some of this cyclic violence and terror and other things that are impacting our society right now.
Absolutely.
This is absolutely an incredible mission. Before jumping into the rapid fire, a quick resource and tool for you as you grow your business. One of the most challenging things out there can be around branding and marketing and really telling your story in a way that resonates with customers. To help, we've built a comprehensive ideal customer worksheet to help you walk through all the different steps in identifying your customer. Download your free copy at positiveimpactpodcast.com/branding. Hang out with us there, and you're also going to find information about a brand new branding guide for young businesses, all giving you the tools to make that positive impact in your business. And now for that rapid fire. Life is a balance of work, passion, and adventure. Can you tell us about a recent adventure or excursion you've gone on?
Yeah, so it was a few weeks ago, I went skydiving with a friend of mine, and it was the third time I've gone. I was trying to articulate like what is so passionate about, or what's so exciting about skydiving, and I think it's just like a surreal experience that the human body isn't prepared for, and it's extremely frightening. But you have to like talk yourself into it all the way until the part where you jump out of a plane or someone pushes you out of a plane. But like once you have overcome that fear, you just feel incredibly empowered to take on like any other challenge, because nothing can be more frightening than jumping out of a plane, right? So I mean, that's certainly, I mean, that's certainly one of the experiences I would recommend to anyone who has the ability to do it. It'll certainly change your perspective on what you can and can't accomplish.
You say the body's not prepared for it. I'm going to argue that the body's not designed for it.
Yeah, no, there are lots of precautions because we're not built to fall from planes.
No, I tend to like
uh,
the seatbelt feature in planes that prevents that from happening. My husband actually just went a couple of weeks ago, so
oh,
we're
great.
we're considering me doing it in the future. As of right now, that is one activity I have yet to do.
We should definitely put it on the list.
Many social entrepreneurs find solace in tranquility in the outdoors. How have you found this beneficial in both your life and your work?
So I have the benefit of living maybe like a 20-minute walk from Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. It's like an incredible getaway that, when you think about what it means to like live in D.C., the pressure, the stress, the politics, everything that makes the city exciting can really take it out from you emotionally. And I think the ability to just like walk down to Walk Creek Park with my dog and, go for an hour-long walk and feel totally immersed in nature is incredibly restorative. And I think, particularly folks who are venturing out on their own need to find ways to just get away for some period of time, whether it's like, if you can do it every day, that's great, although not many of us can. But at least like once a week, just disconnect for a bit and having the ability to go out in nature, leave the phone behind, is just incredibly important for your mental health.
Using nature to battle the stress of DC. Love it. What book do you recommend to others who want to make a socially minded impact?
I would actually recommend The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster, which is this fanciful story about this kid named Milo and just the adventures of creativity and what creativity can provide and the doors that it opens. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs, it's just such hard work that we tend to get a little too focused on the details of how to make certain problems go away and fix the most immediate solutions, whether it's programming or fundraising or payroll. But I think the really important experience is using your creativity and allowing it to flourish, because that's really what opens doors and helps you see solutions you otherwise wouldn't. So definitely The Phantom Tollbooth.
That is not the first time that we've had a children's book recommended. I love it. Actually, Jonathan Zaidman from One to One Movement recommended The Little Prince.
Oh, yeah, that's my wife's favorite.
Oh, so it must be exactly as you said it. As social entrepreneurs, sometimes we just need a different perspective and a more lighthearted way to look at the issues.
Indeed, indeed.
What advice do you have for recent grads looking for a meaningful career?
I think, the answer to that question changes over time. I think 20 years ago, the assumption was that you would, find a job that pays the bills, and over time you would grow to love it and grow into that career, and have that become a really important part of how you identify yourself. I think now we have just a different mindset in terms of how we relate to work and how work relates to our personal and professional goals. So I think it's much more acceptable now to take some time to figure out what of the different types of interests you have, like you can explore and develop an expertise in, knowing that you don't have to be tied to any one thing. The great value of being hyper connected and networked is you have the opportunity to hop around to delve into different areas of expertise that you may be interested in, but also see the connections between work that you're doing, whether you're interested in legal work for human rights or civil rights cases, but also technology, policy, advocacy, communications. All of these different, what used to be different and disparate industries now kind of come together.
What role has mentorship played in your success with Ideal Impact?
Mentorship has played an incredibly important role, but I think it's sort of not what we in the startup or social entrepreneurship scene traditionally think of mentoring. Like, there are lots of metrics that you can Google to find, what are the different elements that you should look for in a mentor: previous experience and success, or a record of failure, or there are a whole bunch of different characteristics that supposedly make for a great mentor. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just someone who has experienced some of what you've experienced and is willing to listen and guide you through just the process of venting. I have two friends, one of which is a great friend from high school and another friend from college, who have been down this road of trying to create something from nothing. And I think, the ability to just call them and vent and just talk about what's going on, and having the level of comfort for them to say, listen, everything you're going through, I've been through. It's hard work, but it's totally normal to feel what you're feeling. Like that, I think, has been incredibly helpful for Ideal Impact. And probably more so than sort of the technical expertise that we look for from mentors and advisors, is just the ability to chat with someone and talk to someone about what's going on in the process of building this company.
Telling you that it's totally normal what you're going through, that is really powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, startups are a roller coaster, and you've got to have some reassurance at that bottom.
Yeah, indeed. Because it gets tough. Is
there a mantra or a motto that has guided your work?
Don't quit. Sort of to piggyback off the last question, I think there are ups and downs, and the biggest challenge is not knowing where you are in that life cycle, right? So if you're running a marathon, it's 26.2 miles, and whether you're at mile 3 or mile 18, you know exactly how much left you have in the tank, and like what's needed to get to the finish line. The challenge with starting a company is there's no set course. And so just committing to solving the problem that you're working on and doing whatever it takes, and not giving up when things get really hard is probably the most important thing, and part of the reason why we finally were able to release our mobile app after 2 years of building this company and this product.
2 years of building. Man, I bet you that your mantra of don't quit was totally essential to get you where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm so excited about this, and I know that there's so many different ways that our listeners out there can make a positive impact in their everyday. What advice do you have for that listener who wants to go out to do something powerful today?
I think the biggest challenge to taking the time to really have impact in your community is that just life is hectic. We have other competing responsibilities, work, family, and everything else in between. All those tiny little tasks that over the course of the day add up to just basically suck all our free time and mental capacity. And the most important thing, I think, is like finding room to be conscious about your decision making. For people who care about the environment or homelessness or any social issue, there are tons of little moments during the day where you can have an opportunity to make someone else's life better, right? Take some small initiative. And it doesn't need to be quitting your job and rescuing refugees, but it's something as small as supporting organizations that are buying and selling products that have been made ethically. So conscious consumerism, taking the time, if you're reading a news story that really means something to you, like take the time to do some research and figure out who the legislators are who are working on the policy, or what organizations have been referenced in that news article, and follow up and say, I read this story, I'm really interested, and I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I want to make this connection, take that first step. And so the real challenge is like being able to step back and think about all the tiny little decisions we make, and appreciate them as opportunities to live a life in line with our values, because that is how we start making a little dent. And if we each try a little bit every day, that adds up, and that has tremendous impact on the way that we relate to our community, and how we make a community that is in line with our values.
Olivier, that is so important. Just a great reminder to be intentional about our day and find little things that we can do to make that positive impact. Today has been truly inspiring. And for all of our listeners who are just fired up about Ideal Impact, how do they get involved?
Yeah, so you can go to www.idealimpact.org, and that has information about where you can download our app for mobile, Android and iOS. You can follow us on social media, and we're actually we're starting up online fellowship as well. So if you want to give a couple hours a week to help us build this community and find opportunities, definitely go to the website. We have many different ways that people can get involved.
Exciting things on the horizon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, movers and shakers, I hope you're totally inspired and fired up by this new way to read the news and get engaged with the issues that matter. I have to tell you, I have the app and it is a pretty cool experience. For all of today's show notes and the resources mentioned, head on over to our show notes page at positiveimpactpodcast.com/idealimpact. For 2 free audio downloads thanks to Audible, head on over to our recommended readings page at positiveimpactpodcast.com/goodreads. There you'll find the Phantom Toll Booth and all of the other recommended reading from our guests thus far. Until next time, keep doing your part to make the world a better place.